control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic. Today we are covering the 5th episode in the Twilight Zone Season 1 called Walking Distance. Now, this one is regarded by many as one of the finest episodes of the show. There's a number of reasons for that. It is an episode that deals with pure fantasy in many ways. There's no real sci-fi here, it's fantasy only. And involves a man who is wistful about his past. It appears from the episode he realises he's near to his small hometown where he grew up, and he decides to go for a walk. And when he gets there, strange things happen. He kind of appears to have gone back in the past somewhat. He realises this, or there's a suspicion of it, when he first enters an ice cream parlour and they charge him no more than they did when he was a boy. A dime, 10 cents, and he's kind of taken aback, and he actually says he won't make any money doing it that way. But then weird things happen. He starts encountering kids that remind him very strongly of his own childhood. He talks about a little kid he talks to, who's played by Ron Howard, surprisingly, very young age. Talks about the Sloan House. He goes, is it still called the Sloan House? And he goes, I'm Martin Sloan. He goes, you're not Martin Sloan. I know Martin Sloan. The kid runs off. Essentially, he's gone back in time and is encountering both himself and his young parents in a form when he was a boy in this period. And it's kind of suggested it's derived from perhaps a yearning to revisit that past. Now, the framing device for him to go back into this is mirrors rather than anything else. For example, we see him in a mirror walking towards the town, and in the next shot we see him approaching this store, but then the camera pans back and we realise we're looking for a mirror coming into the store, a mirror in the store. So mirrors are the magic gateway or something. It's considered well regarded. It covers, one of the themes of Twilight Zone is regret and nostalgia, and this episode has that in space. Now, unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I dislike the Twilight Zone compared to, say, the Outer Limits. I do not like the wallowing in nostalgia and the sort of sentimental streak that you find in the Twilight Zone. So for me, this was not that enjoyable an episode, but I kind of will explain why it's so well regarded. Just to give a little backstory, it aired first time on the 30th of October 1959. The main player in it really is Gig Young as Martin Sloan, as this 36-year-old. That's kind of presented strongly, sort of executive who's doing really well but still regrets, thinks back wistfully on his past. I also read the short story that this either was based on, or I suspect the short story came afterwards. In the short story, is much more strongly, he's actually deliberately left. He suffers from panic attacks. He's got an ulcer. While he appears to be outwardly successful, inside he's not really digging the life. He's stressed out in effect, and he kind of just takes off one day and drives towards his hometown. That's the basis for the written story, but the TV story is slightly different. It's almost like an offhand decision in that it's like, oh, I'll have a lube change. How far is, this place? A mile and a half. He goes, that's walking distance, isn't it? That's walking distance. And he kind of wanders off. So it's a little more casually presented in the TV version of this story. The performances, got no problem with. The script, I don't particularly have a problem with. I think it's reasonably well written. Serling really liked it at the time, though in later years when asked about it, he thought it was kind of second rate, and he wished the parents... for example, the introduction of the parents came later as much more of a sort of dramatic shock. He felt it was too early in the episode. And he sees it really as... He appears to be not proud of it when he talks about it later. Now, Anne Serling, his daughter, considered this obviously a biographical episode, and it was about Serling. And Serling does talk about the inspiration for this episode being walking through a place that was similar to his hometown, and actually visiting back his own town at one point and sort of thinking on it. A place called Recreation Park in... let me just check the location. New York it was. It was Recreation Park in Binghamton, New York. Apparently that the place he visited, this park now has a plaque commemorating this episode. Another thing from Wikipedia about the episode is it's considered the 9th best episode. How about that? 9th best episode in the history of the Twilight Zone by time, apparently. Okay. Directed by Robert Stevens. Now, the music in this one is outstanding, but Bernard Herrmann did actually score it deliberately. Well, this wasn't just sort of previous pieces of composition and just inserted in. He did score it deliberately. There's also some carnival music aspects of it, because there's a carousel and there's a calliope kind of sound that's kind of fun. And while I have problems with it, it doesn't outstay its work. I think it fills its time reasonably well. I don't quite understand one of the dramatic elements of it, where the kid actually hurts himself very badly in the written story, but it doesn't appear that bad. Well, maybe it looks like he's just fallen over, but the actual father comes to see Martin, this version of Martin, acknowledges he is the older version because he's found his driving license, and sort of says it'll be all right. But from this point on, Martin's now got a limp. There's a kind of sort of something that he caused himself has caused him this damage. I think it's a thing that was picked up in the movie Looper. Time travel means that something that happens to your earlier self can then suddenly precipitate as you. It's kind of interestingly done in the film Looper. But this is there is this thing at the end where the father talks to him and says, "Look, this age isn't for you. You've got to go back. You're not. It's not right that you're here," and stuff like that. I think that could have been handled a bit better as like a dramatic, you're a stranger at a time now, you need to return to your own time and appreciate yourself in your own time. And I think it could have done with a bit of stronger about how nostalgia can be poisonous, whereas in this is presented as quite wonderful and lovely, and that's only really right at the end is presented as anything other than that. I have kind of a problem with that as well. Actually, in terms of production, I've got no complaints. This seemed like a pretty good episode. It just really wasn't to my taste. What my downs on this are my taste rather than anything in the episode. I think it seems to wallow in its nostalgia in a way I don't like. And I think nostalgia's fine, and I think it's got its place, and I think it's nice to think back on things. But it's kind of sudden thing of it being truly wondrous to being a horrible, bitter place where you need to kind of, think bad things happen if you wallow in it too much. I guess that's a good message, but it was it came right at the end. It was cursory. I did like the fact that when he kind of was talked to by his own father about sort of going back, the first thing he did is go back to the soda store, and it was obviously a much more up-to-date thing, so he'd come back, as it were. So that was kind of interesting. So yeah, I imagine a lot of people that have seen this and listeners to this who may have seen this like it way more than I do. It just was not to my taste. I prefer something that's slightly less sentimental, frankly. So yeah, okay, so I think I'll wind it up there. And before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to